Hi guys, Andrew here with Headphones.com. Today we're going to take a look at the HarmonicDyne Poseidon. This is an over-ear open-back dynamic driver headphone that normally retails at $435, but this, as of filming this right now, it's on an early bird special, I think on their Kickstarter, for $275. Or somewhere around that. But in any case, in this video, we're going to check it out and see if it's worth getting the Poseidon over the previous model, the HarmonicDyne Zeus, which is right here. Okay, let's get going with the review here, guys, and I just want to do a quick disclaimer and let you guys know that these were sent over for evaluation by Lynn Soul, so a big thanks to Lynn Soul for doing that, but of course I haven't been paid to say anything in particular about them, and all thoughts and opinions are my own. Now, when it comes to the build quality, design, and comfort, I wasn't a huge fan of the look and feel of the other HarmonicDyne headphones. They felt a little bit on the rickety side, and to me, this wooden piece here, this sort of wood-ish thing. I don't really like the look of that. It kind of contrasts a little bit. It reminds me of old-timey station wagons, you know, stuff from the 80s. I get that vibe going on with them. And then I wasn't a fan of these wings. They were a little bit on the rickety side. And with the new design of the Poseidon, aesthetically, so visually, it looks so much better to me. I love the black on the grill. Everything about it looks better. The black on the side pieces is much nicer as well. And importantly, the wood looks like real wood. Now, I don't think this has any meaningful upgrades as far as the, you know, build quality or anything like that. I think that these side pieces are still maybe a little bit, you know, rickety feeling, but the rest of the design has a kind of simple elegance, just like the other two do. The other one being the Helios right here, which is the lower end model. Generally, there's a simplicity and elegance to the design where they have full cup swivel both ways, and then of course you do get a little bit of extension on the arms. And they are generally quite comfortable. Let me just put this on. This is what it looks like, you know, when I'm wearing it. So the wings are still a little bit awkward looking, but I think, you know, in general, the mechanical design here is reasonable. I don't have too many complaints with that. It seems to work just fine. Now, briefly before getting into the sound quality on the Poseidon, I do want to let you guys know that this is not a headphone that requires a crazy amplifier. You can run this off of just about anything. It's very, very efficient and easy to drive. And I did run it off of a wide range of equipment. Just so you guys know, this is using 3.5 millimeter connectors on the cup. So you shouldn't have any trouble finding aftermarket cables if you want to do that. The default cable, let me just grab that. The default cable here is not the greatest because it's a little bit on the stiff side. It keeps its shape a little bit, but at least it's lightweight, so that's good. It's much lighter than the previous one that they sent on the Zeus, so I like that. I just think it's still a little bit on the annoying side, a little springy, but that's okay. All right, let's get into the sound quality now with the Poseidon, and let's begin by talking about the frequency response, the objective stuff, and I'm going to throw the graphs up on the screen here for you guys, but of course, just remember that adherence to a target is not the only thing that there is when it comes to sound quality. The dotted or dashed line you're going to see is the target, and we generally want the solid line to get somewhere close to that target. But the important thing about the target is that it's a known data point. It's a reference point for us to be able to evaluate the headphone in relation to. But without further ado, let's get into the Poseidon here, and starting with the bass, you can see that this is actually just not good. And in some ways, this is a case study on how not to do bass. You have basically no sub bass going on, and then you get this massive dominating upper bass, lower mid-range bleed that just kind of drowns out everything else going on in the mix. It's very warm, yes, but it's also very thick and muddy and boomy and bloated. And I keep saying this, if you want really satisfying and distinct and powerful bass, this is not how you do that. Instead, what you should be looking for is more of a distinct sub bass shelf that comes down right at around, you know, 150 hertz, somewhere around there, and then have the elevation be below that. Now, it's kind of interesting here because the Helios, the Zeus, and the Poseidon all have a generally similar kind of tuning, meaning that they're all kind of a little bit on the warm side, a little bit on the V-shaped side, but the Poseidon's upper bass and lower mid bleed is the worst out of all of them by a noticeable margin. So they're still both warm, they're still V-shaped to a certain extent, but the Zeus actually has better sub-bass extension, and it has not as much bloat and bleed from the upper bass into the lower mids. Now, when it comes to the rest of the frequency response, as mentioned, the mids mids are generally drowned out by the upper bass and the mid bass there with that sort of boomy presence. But then you also do get, thankfully, a decent amount of ear gain. And I think actually the general level there for the ear gains, the upper mids and lower treble and mid treble and upper treble is all kind of where you want it to be. But it's a little bit uneven there in the lower treble, where the Zeus was once again a little bit smoother, at least this one was. And I was actually chatting with another reviewer, DMS, about the Poseidon's tonal balance before doing the review. And I think I described the tonal balance as walking through a swamp while being attacked by bees. That's kind of how I hear this. And in general, I just think that that's a step back from what they had going on with the Zeus, which was just a little bit more balanced and a little bit smoother, across the board. Okay, now let's get into all the subjective stuff, the technical performance, and how this sounds to me. When it comes to detail retrieval, the initial leading edge and the sense of tightness and control on the Poseidon is slightly better than that of the Zeus. So there's this sort of tightness quality that I think a lot of people will hear and really enjoy about this. However, with that said, this also doesn't do very well for the clarity of trailing ends of tones. So I'm not going to go as far as to say that this is particularly blunted like what you get with something like the Drop Panda. It doesn't completely lop off the trailing ends of tones. It's just a little bit on the indistinct side. So if I had to describe the kind of detail character that you get here, it's kind of like a dull planar in a sense. Not the worst I've ever heard there for that, just also not as clear for the trailing ends of tones as what you get with the Zeus. But if you were somebody who gravitates more to that sense of tightness and control and the immediacy of the initial leading edge, then I can see the Poseidon actually being desirable for this quality. But then the other aspects of the technical performance here on the Poseidon just are not as good. Like, for example, the dynamics here in the sense of contrast and punch, it doesn't have it. And this is actually a fairly compressed sounding dynamic driver headphone. Now, I thought maybe this had something to do with the frequency response, so I tried to make sure that they were, EQ'd to around the same result, and found that it didn't help the Poseidon at all. There's something interesting about the differences going on here between the two drivers in the Zeus and the Poseidon, and in some ways it feels like HarmonicDyne are just sort of seeing which one is going to be subjectively more well received. And yeah, for that tightness quality, I can see why the Poseidon was, or why there was an attempt made with the Poseidon with this nickel diaphragm material. But I think the trade-off there when it comes to the clarity of trailing ends of tones isn't really worth it. And then all the other aspects like, the compression that you get here kind of just make it, a step down overall from the Zeus. And then when it comes to soundstage, they're fairly similar. I think the Zeus might be a little bit wider, but that's also partially, I get the feeling at least, because of the massive lower mid boost that the Poseidon has. But on the whole, I'd actually have a hard time saying that soundstage is a weakness on the Poseidon. It's just that it's certainly not better than what you get on the Zeus. So comparing these three HarmonicDyne headphones, I'm going to say that actually the Zeus is the one that's the best for both tonal balance and the technical performance, the subjective stuff and all that, even though it's not totally to my preference and my taste. But for those looking for this kind of sound, I think this is the best one still. Keep in mind that the Helios is quite a bit less expensive than the Poseidon, so I don't really think they're competing all that much. But honestly, for sound quality, they both really aren't that great for their respective price brackets, whereas the Zeus, I think, is. So to extend the comparison to other headphones, there's no scenario where I would take the Poseidon over something like a Hi-Fi Man Sundara, or honestly a Sennheiser HD650, or a number of other headphones that are around its price point. However, when it comes to the Zeus, I can see a reason to go for this type of sound over something like a Sundara, just because it's quite a bit warmer, and for those who are maybe put off by the planar kind of sound, which I don't get that, but some people are, the Zeus might be something to gravitate towards. And then importantly, the Zeus also has a noticeably better soundstage over the Sennheiser HD650. So, or at least it's in a more, evenly distributed and filled in kind of presentation there. So, I can see a reason definitely to go for the Zeus, but I struggle when it comes to the Poseidon and the Helios. All right, so let me give my conclusion here. Very obviously, I don't recommend the Poseidon just because I think HarmonicDyne's already done something better with the Zeus. And there are a number of other headphones headphones that I think make a little bit more sense at this price tag. However, with that said, I think the conclusion here is actually that this is a very interesting thing to compare. When I have 3 different headphones that have a similar design with all a generally similar kind of tonal balance and frequency response, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Poseidon is the worst out of the bunch. But with that said, they all have different driver technology going on in them. There's different material being used for each driver. So in some ways, I kind of see this as like a interesting experiment, you know, like which driver type is going to be more subjectively well received, and then what can you do with each driver type as far as the tonal balance is concerned. You know, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages of using different materials, you know, stiffness and rigidity for treble frequencies, and then compliance of the surround and compliance in general for bass. And it's just interesting to see how these kind of play out and are instantiated in these different headphones. I think in some ways the tricky thing about this, though, is that they're in different price brackets. And this is where I think for a lot of people confirmation bias is going to play a role, where they're going to think, oh, the more expensive one is the one that's going to sound better, therefore it's going to be, you know, more, I don't know, better at some particular aspect. But in reality, for me, when it comes to these 3 headphones, the Zeus and the driver that's going on in here is the clear winner. And I hope that HarmonicDyne can, you know, do some more stuff with this driver rather than what they've done with the other 2. You know, the nickel diaphragm in the Poseidon doesn't really do it for me. So I'd love for HarmonicDyne to maybe do some more stuff with the Zeus, maybe try and do some, you know, alternative tuning or a Zeus V2 or I don't know, something like that, because I really do think there's more potential here in the Zeus than there is in either of the other 2. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for taking the time to watch it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.